Hello, welcome to the Compassionate Capitalist radio show with host Karen Rands. I'm excited to be a solo guest host today. I'm not interviewing anybody on this particular segment. It's also available on video on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, it's also available on podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Blog Talk Radio, Stitcher, all those places. And I think you can Google Play it as well. So today I decided to do a topic that I felt was there's a lot of confusion out there. I get people when I talk about my compassionate capitalist movement, they want to put it in the bucket of conscious capitalism, and I always have to try to explain why it's different. I thought, maybe I should just do a show on that and put it out there so people understand the difference. And both of them are great, I believe, but there is a difference. And so in this show, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about it from a economic standpoint, from a historic standpoint, and from a going forward standpoint. And what does it mean? And so both of them were started about the same time, although the idea of compassionate capitalism was started probably 10 to 15 years prior to my version of compassionate capitalism, and conscious capitalism was started. Conscious capitalism as a concept, the concept was been around for a long time, but the term conscious capitalism didn't come into vogue until 2010 when this book was written by David Sherwin, Conscious Capitalism. And then an organization was started that has chapters and all that kind of stuff. And so before I get into defining them very specifically, what I would like to do is spend a little bit of time talking about what I consider the historic relevance and why these two terms or concepts, compassionate capitalism and conscious capitalism, are something that is, I think, really integral to the DNA, if you will, of the United States. If you look back through our history, the United States was discovered because of adventurers. As the United States, the Americas were already here, but it's still, when the Native Americans migrated from other lands, they were in search of something better than what they had. They were in search of more food, better crops, better places to, better weather, whatever kinds of stuff. That's what they were in search of when they went across and discovered it. And then when Europeans came here, it was in search of a better life, freedom to do more of the things that they wanted to do. Yes, there were some criminals that came here as part of that purge of the European nation, but for the most part, it was we have been a society of people seeking something better. A better way of life, better opportunities. And I think entrepreneurism is sort of integral to that. When somebody decides to become an entrepreneur, typically it's because they have a vision of something that will make the world better or make their better, but also help them fulfill the dreams that they have of a better life. Not everybody's built to be an entrepreneur, but it is something that is very important. And it is something that we do really well in the United States, better than anywhere else does. And in our society, in our mental DNA, our emotional DNA in the United States, it's like we are wired to do that in a certain way. We also are wired in a way of what I call the compassion side of things, of the seeking to take care of those that are less fortunate from us. Donations are a big thing here, whether it's donating to United Way or donating to the local, flea market or the place that down your street that supports, the battered women's shelters or supports children in need or whatever it might be, or the hungry. We donate, we do food banks, we do all kinds of things to try to help those that are less fortunate than we are. It's been something that's been part of how we have been wired as Americans for a very long time. And we are always trying to give a hand up whenever we can instead of a handout with the ways that we donate our money. and so it's something that when there's a natural disaster, a hurricane or a fire, people will go to the rescue of those strangers that they know. And even though we have as a history had divisions based off of race and gender and ethnic and religion, when it comes down to a family in crisis, or even if you don't know these people, you will reach out and help them. That's just part of what I believe our American DNA is. And so when you look at conscious capitalism, started in 2010, at that point in time, prior to that, we had this idea of sustainable businesses. We've had the give back, the double bottom line. There's been, when I first started working with entrepreneurs and investors, I ran an angel investor group for 15 years here in the Atlanta area. I met this guy that his business was helping startups that were tech and very driven create corporate cultures that had a certain amount of giving involved in them. They would have weekends when all the employees would go to Habitat for Humanity. We have, Habitat for Humanity was started here in Georgia by Jimmy Carter, primarily to let corporations, let their employees, encourage their employees to go and volunteer as a team building exercise to build a house for somebody that was less fortunate than them. And so in the early days when I was with IBM, I was always involved in volunteering. They encouraged you to volunteer. You got rewarded for volunteering. You got time off during the Olympics to go volunteer for the entire 3 weeks of the Olympics and the training and all that kind of stuff. So there was always, the big companies have always done that. And just recently, as an example, Delta, they paid during the government shutdown, they paid for the federal employees that work at the Martin Luther King National Park to be paid to work there during Martin Luther King's birthday weekend. That was their corporate citizen. They were a good corporate citizen to conscious capitalism to do stuff in their local community that would help what is important to that community. Martin Luther King is very important to the Atlanta community. Those federal employees would probably have been there working for free anyhow. But they knew there would be a large crowd, so they wanted them to feel enthusiastic about working on those days. So that's that. So conscious capitalism, as by definition, is a way of thinking about capitalism and business that better reflects where we are in the human journey, the state of our world today, and the innate potential of business to make a positive impact on the world. Conscious businesses are galvanized by a higher purpose that serve, align, and integrate the interest of all their major stakeholders. So the stakeholders become the community, the ones that are supporting that business. It's the employees. And it's their products, their customers, making good choices, doing away with styrofoam in your product packaging. That's good for the environment, good for the employee, for your customers. It's being able to buy your products from places and where they make them, that they don't abuse the workers in other countries where they pay them a tenth of what they might pay in the United States. They don't have plants like that. That's a conscious capitalist company. They pay their women and men the same for the same work that that is done. They don't have, we've got this big thing right now, this big expose in the universities that professors, men and women professors at the same grade, same experience, same everything, women are paid 10% less than men on average across the board. It's actually 13% on average across the United States. And so when men and women are doing the same job, they're doing the same, they got the same reviews and the same outcome of their performance, but they get paid differently. And it goes back for decades and decades, because men as the primary earner in a household and supporting a wife and children were paid more than women. But that's not the case anymore. And so corporations are trying to get caught up with society and adjust their level, their pay things that regardless of gender. Okay. Or race, which is against the law. It's not against the law on gender yet, but on race it is. And so that's one, paying everybody the same. If there are situations of sexual harassment, you don't bury it under the rug, as we've seen happen with a lot of these big corporations, and they're getting in trouble for it now. Instead, they come out right in front. They get in front of it. They investigate it. They handle it. They terminate the employee that is at fault. And these are things that they do for their employees. If they decide that it makes sense to have a cafeteria on site or to have daycare on site or whatever to help it better for their employees, they do. If they have, if an employee needs to take a short-term leave because of a family matter crisis situation, they let them do it without invoking the Family Medical Leave Act, which demands it by law to keep their job. But they want to, if they cherish that employee, they will. They'll keep them, they'll let them take the time off, they'll give them some kind of way of working remote. There's a lot of things that they do to enrich their employee environment, and then they give to the community. They support the local high school teams, and they do stuff, they donate books or computers to the local elementary schools. They let their employees volunteer. Chick-fil-A here in Georgia, where they sponsor one of the big SEC football games, and all their employees go and work, and they get to work, and they get time off. They, all this kind of stuff. They get bonuses. They get paid for working it, and they provide that extra staff that they need, right? And so there's a lot that people do, that companies do, that conscious capitalism, with the idea that it will increase double bottom line. It's the give back part, but it's also, it increases their profitability because they have a more productive workforce. They have better engagement of their community. They have customers that are more loyal because of the choices they make and the products how they make their products and how they deliver their products. So that's conscious capitalism. It's become a whole thing with chapters and all of this stuff to try to encourage the owners of companies to be more engaged within this idea of having a conscience in your capitalism. And you don't have CEOs that are making 100 times the amount of salary of their entry-level employee, those kind of things. So that's a big part of it. All right, so that's that. So compassionate capitalism. So compassionate capitalism was something that I started. I took a concept that had been made prominent in one of the big multi-levels 20 plus years ago. And during the recession back in 2008, 2009, I decided that I needed to I found from my investors that a lot of them had day jobs. They ran their own companies, or they were execs in companies. And so when the recession happened, they had to reduce down on the amount of time they could spend in the world of angel investing, because it took time to do due diligence. They still wanted to invest in these companies and make money from investing in these companies, but they really didn't have the time to do the due diligence. And so I saw compassionate capitalism as a way to influence our economy and turn our economy around, because where jobs are created is with early stage startup companies. And if you could when the banks weren't lending money because we were in a financial crisis, if investors would provide the money to those entrepreneurs in a form of whatever, in a loan, in an equity thing, whatever they did, they would help that entrepreneur get through the crisis, and they would create jobs. They would bring innovation to the market, and they would create wealth for all those involved. So I redefine compassionate capitalism to be when people invest time, knowledge, resources, money into entrepreneur endeavors to bring innovation to the market, create jobs, and create wealth. That was compassionate capitalism. And I felt like if I could get that point out there, if I could get that point across to people, that we could impact our own economy in the United States, our own economy in our local community, by giving them a hand up, not a handout. And so as I'm an economist by training, and so as the first step was to rename my radio show. It used to be called Southeast Private Equity Conference, or SPEC Radio. because we had this big giant event that we used to do with companies pitching to investors and stakeholders in the community. Then I named it the Compassionate Capitalist Radio Show. That was back in 2009. And so as we've gone forward, what we've seen happen is that there's this world of investing in entrepreneurs was really very much a minority, like a very small percentage of the people. If you look at, even now to this day, even though we've had some of the changes, probably less than 1% of those that had the financial means to invest in companies did. And the rest of them, maybe 5% knew of it, but that other 95% that had the means, making over $200,000 a year, had discretionary income, had no idea that they even had the ability to invest in a private business. I discovered that when I jumped into the world of angel investing. And then as I got into looking more into it, and I wrote my book, Inside Secrets to Angel Investing. I wrote that book because when 2012, the original Jobs Act, Jumpstart Our Startup Businesses, was put into place, the goal of that was to take away some of the barriers between entrepreneurs and investors so that investors could invest in these entrepreneurs and they could help them bring the innovation to market, or help them just expand their business and grow that business. And entrepreneurs in doing so would have an opportunity to share in the wealth that was being created all over the place in entrepreneurs and in that very wealthy 1% of the country that invested in entrepreneurs. And even the playing field when it came to becoming wealthy through investing in entrepreneurs. The greatest source to create wealth is being an entrepreneur, being a successful entrepreneur, to get the freedom and the time to do the things and the money to do the things that you want to do. That is a successful entrepreneur. The next greatest way to create wealth is to be somebody who invests in a successful entrepreneur. And with the Jobs Act, we now have 5 ways to invest in an entrepreneur, 4 ways to invest in an entrepreneur that are from a crowd, if you will. We got Reg CF, which is anybody that with discretionary income. There's limits on how much you can invest depending on your income, but you can invest in a business that goes through a legal portal, and you can buy equity in that company and share in that company's success as they grow. That company can raise up to $1 million, and most of the investors kind of go into an LLC. That's one way. And you, as an investor, whatever it is, there's all kinds of businesses in there. You can invest in the intrastate investment exemption, which is now the Reg D 504. A company can raise up to $5 million from investors that are located in the state that they are located in. And the investors can be, in most states, you have to check with your state, but the investors can be of any income level. They can, if they make under $200,000 a year, then it's up to 10% of their income, or a max of $2,000 in a given company. But if they make over that, then it's just like accredited investor rules. And so so if you have a business in your community, could be a franchise, could be a restaurant that's wanting they've got 4 locations and they want to become a national franchise, and you see them being able to hire 100 people at their corporate headquarters because they're preparing food for distribution or preparing whatever it is. They got warehouse jobs, they've got corporate training jobs, they've got all kinds of jobs that they would do if they were able to become a national franchise. You got the additional franchise locations that we get opened up there, they got training facilities, that kind of thing. You've got a small manufacturing company that's been manufacturing offshore. They want to bring that manufacturing into the United States, into your state. They're going to have manufacturing jobs. They're going to be have all kinds of office jobs associated with that. They're going to have more salespeople, and they're going to get the money to be able to expand and go on a national basis and reduce their cost of goods. So there's all kinds of examples where companies that may have been around 3 years, 5 years, 10 years have the ability to expand and get money that they can't get from a bank. And they can't get from venture capital firms and can't get from private equity funds. They can get it from the investors in the community. There's the ability for them to go out and raise money on a national basis as they grow their national presence and their national footprint, and they attract new customers into their company by doing advertising. For example, in Indeed, you never heard of Indeed until they started advertising, right? Or Untucked shirts. or the shaving club. Until they started doing national advertising, they were doing whatever they were doing in their community and stuff like that. But when they started national advertising, they now have the ability to draw upon a national audience of customers, but also as potential investors. They're accredited investors under a 506C. That's under Reg D 506C. They can raise unlimited amounts of money, but everybody must prove they're an accredited investor. Or under a Reg A plus, the type 2 of Reg A, they can raise up to $50 million from unaccredited and accredited investors. That's how Chicken Soup for the Soul raised their $35 million from people putting $100 in to $10,000 in. That's how Brewdog Brewery raised $17 million the first time. They're in the middle of raising theirs now, and they're raising it from people that like to drink beer. Okay, the smallest investment is $150, I think. And so, and I listened to Jason Kokonis do an interview with Seed Invest, and he talked about Reg CF, and he said if he knew what he knew now, he's the big author of Angel Wings. If he knew what he knew now, he would go back and he would have a corporate job when he was 25, and he would take $500 a month, and he would put it into a Reg CF company that he could put in because he wasn't an accredited investor, and he would have more money than he would ever have in his 401k, because over the course of 5 years, having invested in 60 companies, with at least a quarter of those hitting it, that's kind of the rule of thumb, the way this works when you have to diversify, and he may have lost money on a whole bunch of them, but on the rest of them, he would have made millions of dollars on. And you would never have put $500 in every month into a 401k and have millions of dollars into that, right? It wouldn't. You'd have a couple $100,000. And so, that's the difference of creating wealth, becoming a compassionate capitalist. So I wrote my book to teach people how to do that, how to evaluate a deal, and how to figure out, are you the person that invests $500, or are you the person that invests $50,000 in a company? What kind of companies can you invest in? What kind of companies, what should you invest in? What stage of companies? You're not sure if you want to put money in on something that's illiquid that you may not see a return for 5 years, then you become a bank. Because when companies have new orders, they've been doing $100,000 a month, and all of a sudden they get a giant order. They've been working for a year to get this order, and they got to do $500,000 a month in product. They can't go to a bank and do that. And they have to, but you can, and they can't even go to factoring organizations to do that. They have to get the purchase order financing, and the only way to get purchase order financing is somebody will give them money. Movies, we got a program with movies that you don't have to come out of pocket to finance a movie. You can provide your assets as collateral against a distribution contract, which then gets financed through an SBA thing, and we can do a movie. We can get a movie financed. There's all kinds of ways for investors to be able to participate with capital, without capital. You can invest you can invest in real estate through your self-directed IRA, but you can also take money out of your big old fat 401k and put it into a self-directed IRA and invest in businesses. The best way is to find a deal, somebody that's doing royalty financing or revenue financing. They're a cash flow positive company. They need growth capital. They're not a company that's necessarily going to be bought or go public. They could be one of those franchise things that we were talking about. They don't know. They may want to have a generational business, but they could go from a $5 million company to a $20 million company in 5 years, and your $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000, $50,000 investment would get a percentage of their revenue until 4 times that money has been paid back. And if you do it through a self-directed IRA, that's tax-free. So you go from $50,000 to $200,000 in your self-directed IRA, and you don't pay any taxes on it. That's pretty darn good. So these are the kind of things that a compassionate capitalist looks and strives to do. They want to make money. Of course they want to make money. That's the capitalist side. We are a capitalist society. But they want to do it by helping an entrepreneur achieve their goals. And they don't have to be the entrepreneur that assumes all the risks and all the time. I see all these executives all the time. They keep thinking they get their midlife crisis and they decide they want to go start a company. But they don't remember how hard it is to work 80 hours a week starting a company for next to nothing, compared to that $500,000, $400,000 a year job that they had. And they got to take off on Fridays and go play golf or take clients and do stuff. They can't do that when you're a startup. And you can't buy a company for $500,000, okay? not a company that you want to run, like the one you were making $500,000 for. So take some of that money and put it into the entrepreneurs, into innovation, and diversify. I spoke to an investor the other day who has a day job. She's investing in some money in the aftermarket for Lyft and for some of these companies that are getting ready to go public. She's paying a lot for her stock, but not as much as what it will be when it goes public compared to a startup. But she's got some in startups, but startups are highly risky because, 1 in 7 fail. No, wait, 5 in 7 fail. You know what I mean? They're highly risky. So somewhere between that and the other is an area for you to create wealth depending on your level of risk and how much cash flow and discretionary income that you will have on a yearly basis. And you make a commitment to do it on a year-by-year basis. So it is a outward, Compassionate Capitalist is an outward for you personally making a decision that you're just not going to buy and sell to make, some percentage on your money. I'm going to buy and sell real estate and I'll make 20% on my money. I'm going to buy and sell stock and I might make 12% on my money. No, I'm going to buy stock in a private company. I'm going to provide financing to a private company. I'm going to make 2% a month. I'm going to roll that over. I'm making 24% on my money every year, compounding that. Okay. Or I'm going to put a royalty financing. I'm going to make 4 times my money. My $20,000 is going to become $80,000 in 2 or 3 years. But I'm helping that company achieve their goals, and I get to have the excitement of being a part of that without having all the risk. That's compassionate capitalism. And I'm going to show you, for those people that are watching on my video, I'm holding up a visual aid. Okay. So if you see this is for those that aren't listening, you go to YouTube right now and fast forward to when I hold up the map of a bunch of green dots. It's the map of the United States. And so this is what I try to stress when I go in and I speak at economic development conferences. I go to universities, they'll sponsor these, Chamber of Commerce will sponsor these, and I'll come in and I'll be a keynote. And I talk about the idea of investing in your community and entrepreneurism and angel investing and all this kind of stuff, right? Because if you notice, if you look, this is a map of the income by county in dollars. Right? So the darker green it is means there's more income in that county. And where do you see most of these? You see them all along, like the very darkest green is up here where Silicon Valley is, right? And you go along and you go all the way over here to the financial market in the Northeast, right? Most of your major cities are in there. But if you go and you mark, there's another one that you can get a similar map to this that I use as part of my training on this stuff. And if you look at where the most active amount of angel investors are, it's in these areas that are most green. Well, that seems logical, right? But it's not just the people with the money investing. It's a generational thing. That started back in the 1980s when angel investing first got started. But remember, it was an exclusive club. It only changed in 2012 and really 2016 when they opened it up under Reg CF. It actually didn't get legal until 2017. So 2015 was Reg A+, 2016 was 506C, 2017 was Reg CF. Okay, so those, it's fairly recent that you've been able to get average people to be able to invest in these things. And so this has been only the most wealthy being able to reinvest. And so employees of those companies became wealthier because they were the early people in those companies. And when those companies went public, they got some of that wealth as well as employees that came out of it. And then they became angel investors. So in these areas where you have the darkest green and you got, it's not surprising, Seattle, Microsoft, right? How many millionaires did Microsoft create? Well, they go and they become investors. Boulder, Colorado is a big area now that has a lot of investors. You got a whole bioscience thing going on up in Ohio, and you look at there where the green is, right? So it's in the communities that made an investment. They encourage people to invest in the tech companies there, and then the ripple effect of how those invested in other companies, and those have grown. And it's by encouraging people and providing training. I'm the only one that offers training on how to be an angel investor. Kauffman Foundation does it through the Angel Capital Association. But if you're an individual, if you're in a community that doesn't have a structured angel group, if you're in an outlying area, Columbus, Georgia, Okay, if you're in some of these areas that don't have an angel network structure to it, then it's hard to get something going, particularly in a tech world. But there's plenty of money in those areas that people have made, whether it's be in farming, whether it be in traditional businesses, the service businesses, a plumbing business, a construction business. There are people in those areas that have made money that if they understood how to take their money and put it into entrepreneurs, they could impact their entire community and grow their community and grow the overall wealth of their community. If family offices made a commitment to carve out a portion of the money and not just put it in real estate and buying and selling in real estate, but to put it into something that created jobs, right? They went and found an opportunity zone opportunity, and they created an incubator near a college that does not have an incubator there. They would have entrepreneurs come out of that college and be able to then plant jobs, create companies right there in their community, because they would not pay any capital gains on that money. They could take money out of their real estate and they could go put it into an incubator, a live, work, play. You'd have retail on the bottom. You could have, this is my idea. I'm trying to find people that want to go do this, that understand that. I'm beating this drum. Compassionate capitalism, opportunity zone funds, live, work, play, incubate entrepreneurs, provide housing for the students, provide great quality retail, restaurants and stuff on the bottom that enrich the lives of the people that are around there. I got a formula for sidebar angel investors. Get your, you've got capital gains, venture capitalists, you got capital gains this year. Put it into an incubator. Go find somebody. Come talk to me, Karen Rands, KarenRands.co, and I will help connect you up with the people that are wanting to do that can run the incubator, that know how to run the retail side of it, know how to build student housing. We just have to put the team together. We can go do that. But that's compassionate capitalism. It's looking back into your community, investing in your community, or investing in businesses that mean something to you, that make you excited, that have all the right financials and the right method of going about making money. That they know how they're going to make money, right? All that stuff. I cover all that stuff within my content on my blog and everything like that. But I want to encourage that. So I wrap up here. That is the difference between conscious capitalism and compassionate capitalism. Help me spread the word of compassionate capitalism. Help me make that something that I want, my legacy, and what I want. I would love to have chapters and training all over of people teaching this. They just have to be true to what it is. They can't go and hijack it and go make it into something else. But I will authorize you to create workshops to teach entrepreneurs how to be successful and to teach angel investors or people how to be angel investors. Okay? I want people to strive to learn how to invest in entrepreneurs the way they strive to learn how to invest in real estate now, or learn how to invest in the stock market. With the advent of E-Trade and Yahoo Finance and all these different things, there's all kinds of training out there for learning how to invest in the stock market, in the do-it-yourself world of investing in the stock market. You pay a little bit of a fee, okay? When it came to real estate 30 years ago, only the most wealthy were able to invest in real estate. It was the very most wealthy and institutional funds. But then the laws changed on how you handled investment properties and how you were able to write those taxes off. And the laws changed on how you could get money and how you could finance that stuff. And then they started providing education. So I provide education. In my book, the book has got a how-to, step-by-step, but also a resource portal that's worth thousands of dollars that you get access to for 20 bucks. With worksheets on how to evaluate a company, how to judge the amount of money you should set aside for, what kind of companies should you invest in, sample term sheets, all kinds of things that people need to look at, need to know about if they're going to get started in this. So with that, thank you very much. Share this video with people. Let's help spread this word of compassionate capitalists. Listen to the rest of my shows. Join the movement. Onward and upward. Thank you for listening today.